right, welcome back to another episode of the McKinney Podcast, celebrating what makes us unique by nature. It's episode 1 of our batch recording for November. How's it going, Fred?
Oh, man, I tell you, the weather, I believe, has finally turned to remaining less than triple digits.
This is not false fall. This is actual fall now, right?
Fall. That's right.
No, Roy Ponder, God bless him. He is my one and only source for weather. I don't even look at the network news for weather. And Roy says that this is here to stay, and we've got a good freeze coming next week. So I will be like a little puppy dog running around, happily dancing, going, "Oh, it's cold again." So
I'm not trying to hear about freeze stuff, you know. I just want it to be less than baking.
Well, it's barely freeze. It's like 29, 30 degrees. But hey, after the weather we've had the last few months with, what was like 95 degrees the last week of October, I will take anything in the 30s and 20s is fine with me.
Plus rain, plus, you know, everything else.
Okay.
So, yeah, let's have a break in the weather and something nice.
You know, this episode today is special because we have another name being knocked off the list. You know,
right.
When we sat down back, several months ago and built out our guest list for the first 50 or so episodes, the first year of the podcast, the gentleman sitting over there to our right was on that list from the very beginning.
Literally, he was on fire.
He was on fire, quite literally. Oh, you're giving away the lead, aren't you?
That's right.
Well, let's just go ahead and give him the intro that he deserves. Hold on. I don't have my phone, so I don't have the. He filled out a bio that I don't have. So I'm gonna.
Didn't you get the new phone?
I have the new phone, but it's my daughter unplugged my charger last night, and I didn't realize it until this morning when I picked up my phone and had a little red bar of battery on. And I was like, "Oh no, the phone didn't charge overnight."
Oh no.
So. Boy, that was just the most botched guest intro ever, isn't it?
Right.
I'm going to make up an intro for the first time ever. Can we do that? All right, Paul, buckle up because I don't have any idea where this is going.
Let's do it.
Paul Dow hails from the great state of Minnesota, where he was a junior hockey champion, state finalist 3 years in a row. After that, he starred in the rodeo in Wisconsin. He moved over to Wisconsin, where he was a rodeo star, and that's where he found his love for fires. He started out starting fires and went to jail for arson and pyromania, and then decided to have restitution for himself by going and flipping the coin over and entering into firefighting as a profession. And now, through a random course of events, he's found himself as the fire chief of the great city of McKinney. Please welcome Mr. Paul Dow. There you go. I'm sure none of that is actually true, but hey, it makes for a good story.
It's entertaining.
So we need one of those actual claims and results may vary.
Results may vary.
That's right.
Now, if you actually were a hockey or rodeo champion, I'm going to feel like Nostradamus up here.
You're not close.
Not even close. No. I didn't think so. No.
So those numbers you gave me for the Powerball, probably I shouldn't even use it.
Did you buy those tickets?
No.
No, I would not recommend that, man. Would not recommend that. Paul Dow, welcome to the show, man.
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks for coming in. I don't know if you've listened to a single episode. You may have no idea what to expect here, but
I have not. No.
Awesome. Okay, I love it when they come in clean, no point of reference. Let's get the real Paul Dow story. How in the world did you find yourself into this chapter? Start as far back as you want. Childhood, school, whatever you want to talk about. Give us the Paul Dow run-up story. We'll talk about McKinney. We'll talk about fire department, your role as fire chief, a little bit later in the conversation. We'd love to hear your backstory.
Sure. No, absolutely. I grew up, born and raised in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and so basically started out in Rio Rancho, New Mexico, in the fire service. But before I actually graduated high school. I had no clue what I wanted to do, like most people. So literally the day after my graduation, we had a party. And my grandfather told me, hey, show up at my house tomorrow morning, bring your work boots, bring a lunch. Okay? And he didn't argue with him.
That's right.
Yeah.
So I showed up in the morning. He took me right across the street to a contractor's house. He's like, going to frame houses now. Okay. So that's what I did. I started framing houses. And then the contractor I worked for, this guy, Doug Sims, great guy, great mentor for me, just the way he conducted himself, the way that he treated people. I really just liked him as a mentor. My tools got stolen one day. We were at a pawn shop. A fire truck goes blasting past us. And he's like, man, that's the job. That'd be a cool job. I didn't start thinking about that. Maybe, I had no idea what I wanted to do. And then worked with a couple of electricians that were also firefighters on one of the job sites. And they were telling me, hey, come volunteer with us. As soon as I did that, I was hooked. That was it. I knew exactly what I wanted to do. Started volunteering in Rio Rancho, got picked up with them, worked there for a couple of years, and worked in Albuquerque, worked my way up through the ranks in Albuquerque, built a family. I've got a wonderful wife. I've been together with Stephanie for 25 years now. I've got 3 kids, one that's in the Navy. I've got one son that's 19, and he's looking to get in the fire service. He's testing with a couple of local departments. And I've got a daughter that's 12 years old and kind of runs our household. And so we lived in Albuquerque. I spent, 26 years in Albuquerque in the fire service, and worked my way all the way up to the rank of fire chief the last couple of years. And then that system is set up to where the retirement kind of caps out at some point. And so my family and I knew that, hey, once that happens, we're going to move. We had family in McKinney. We loved the area. And so I wanted to raise my daughter in an area that just, a little safer. Albuquerque is a rough town. I tell people all the time, it's a fun place to be a firefighter. It's a hard place to raise a family.
Yeah.
That's just the truth. And so we came here to the McKinney area. We actually initially moved to Melissa. Now we're in the McKinney area, and love it. Just very blessed. When I moved out here, I didn't have a job. I was completely retired from the fire service. I started doing some consulting work, and I ended up doing some work with the McKinney Fire Department with the former fire chief, Chief Kistner. So he had hired me to do a training class for the department. So I built a program. Then they had an assistant chief job that was open, and I applied for that. And I got hired on as the assistant chief. And the day they hired me, they told me that the chief was going to retire, and they would ask me to be interim chief at the end of the month. I said, okay, sounds good.
End of the month.
End of the month.
Not the end of the year.
No.
End of the month.
End of the month. So I was like,
oh my.
Sounds good. Okay. So did that for a few months, and then they had the job opportunity for the fire chief position. I applied. There was a nationwide search. There was a number of good candidates. The city administration chose me, which I'm glad they did, and here I am.
Good candidates, but not Paul Dow level of candidates.
Right.
I guess not.
No.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting that you say you graduated and your grandfather said, hey, come on. And then the...
you don't argue with grandpa.
Yeah,
No.
that's right. But then the GC contractor you're working with, he's like, man, that's the job. And you're like, okay, and you go. And then, you show up here in McKinney and they're like, Haywood Jr., you're like, okay. And then they're like, how about? And so, like, are you a man easily swayed and influenced?
I think he's a man who knows a good time when he sees it. And
I will jump on an opportunity.
There you go.
I am not afraid. I also kind of live my life, especially recently, last few years, just understanding that, hey, God's got a plan, and go with it.
Okay.
Don't fight it. I had when I first left the fire service, because that was a big part of my life. You go from 18, 19 years old, and you're in the fire service. It becomes part of your identity, and then I retire, and it shuts off. And so that connection with other people, you're not in a fire station, you're not working that camaraderie, that's just gone overnight. And I missed it. And I got some of that by teaching. I was teaching at Collin College. I was doing some consulting work, but it wasn't the same. I didn't have a patch.
Yeah.
I wasn't a part of a department again. And my entire experience as a consultant with the McKinney Fire Department was amazing. Everybody treated me so professionally. They didn't have to, and that's when you can tell when someone's genuine as well. When you don't have anything to offer them, and they'll still treat you with that dignity and respect. And so I was like, this is an amazing department. What a great culture. And so, I was so lucky.
Volunteer fire department is a wild thing, man. Like, it is not anything remotely close to Albuquerque, or as my 5-year-old daughter says, Albuquerque, which is super adorable. But when we, born and raised in rural East Texas, we had a VFD in my area. We were outside of Lufkin, which is, the sticks of the sticks. Fuller Springs Volunteer Fire Department. Okay. They had one truck, and it was old as dirt. Your experience as a young man jumping into the fire service on a VFD, what was that like, your first call out? Because, you're what, 18, 19 years old? You're pumped up with teenager testosterone. You're at the very beginning of your post-high school life. Like, talk us through that first call out when you're riding the truck on a call out. Like, what was that like for you?
It was wild. It really was. I went through the training like everybody else, got my firefighter, got my EMT, went through a field training officer program for a couple of months, and then they're like, okay, you're at Station 2 by yourself. Okay. So
Wow.
I remember going to one call, and of course I kind of had a baby face, 18, 19 years old. I remember showing up at one call, and it was a minor motor vehicle accident, but there was a couple of patients that were hurt. I'm waiting for the resources to get there. So I jump out of the fire engine, and I start talking to a couple of people, and one of the guys looks at me, and he's like, hey, when the real firemen showing up? And I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, are you like the junior firefighter brigade? And I'm like, no, I'm actually part of, the Rio Rancho Fire Department. And so it was, that was a little challenging. And then to be on calls by myself was definitely different. I remember working a cardiac arrest, a victim pulling up inside the house, and seeing the person laying there on the floor and a family member and making sure that, okay, well, hook up the defibrillators and, start defibrillating the patient, waiting for someone else to get there and kind of help you to work a cardiac arrest, by yourself. But very different.
Gosh, it's such a cool moment. We can all imagine that, when you're early in your career, and every career is different. Obviously, with yours, it's literally a matter of life and death. It's not, a white collar job. You're not sitting in an office somewhere. But that moment when you're in a crisis situation and you have that thought of, when are the adults showing up?
Yeah.
Like, when's the person going to show up who's going to handle this crisis? And then it occurs to you, oh, that's me. I'm the adult, and I'm responsible for dealing with this situation.
Yes.
I am the one coming in the door to save the day. What was that like? Like, mentally, just getting around to, I'm that person. I'm the one who's coming in, who's going to make this situation better. That's got to be a really cool experience.
It is, and it's very surreal when you start to actually do it. And I think that confidence builds after a while. I remember another fire I had early in my career. Same thing. I'm at a station by myself. It's late at night. There's 3 stations in Rio Rancho at the time. One station has 3 people, including the battalion chief, and the other stations had just 1 person. So I'm at one of the stations that has just 1 person, pull up, and the house is on fire. People are telling me they're out of the house, but the back room is on fire. And you can see the smoke and flames coming out. So all I can do is take the truck, put it in pump, stretch an attack line to the front door, wait for somebody else to get there. By that time, they're coming, but there's still people that are outside that are probably as old as my grandparents, and they're telling me about where the fire's at, what's inside the house at that time. And I know they're looking at me the same thing, thinking, this guy's 19, 20 years old, but he knows what he's doing. He's competent. And the other guys got there. We went inside. It was pretty much a bread and butter type fire. Stretched the line back there, knock down the main body of fire, and then go ahead and check for extension. Go ahead and protect any belongings, work with the family at that point. And then afterwards, talking to them, they were really happy. And I think at that point was one of the triggers, like kind of what you were saying, that this is something that not like I can do it well, and all that training pays off.
Okay, so I have to know, you started us off at, high school graduation. As a child, one, did you ever, like I think in general all young men idolize like police and firemen and astronauts and pilots and stuff like that. But, one, as a child, was that you? And 2, growing up, did you just have this natural ease of stepping into situations or trying new things?
I was always able to try new things.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't bother me. Kind of had like I'm gonna say a no fear type mentality. But there was if there was an opportunity, I took it. I was kind of a rambunctious teenager, to be honest with you. So I really didn't have much of a direction. I was blessed. I was just naturally I could come into a classroom and score well on tests and things like that. I didn't really focus near as much as I should have. I even talked to my daughter about that last night. Because it's her first year in 6th grade. She's struggling with a couple of classes, and told her, like, if I would have applied myself more and focused more, better outcomes. But back then it was some things just came easier to me. But definitely a little more rambunctious than I probably should have been.
So, question about Albuquerque, because everything I know about Albuquerque I learned from Breaking Bad.
Okay.
And I've only been to Albuquerque twice, and both times I was driving back from Phoenix to Dallas.
Okay.
I actually drove to the Breaking Bad house, and it's the funniest thing ever. There's a big old fence in front, and it says, "Take your pictures from across the street. Do not approach this house." And it's like, okay, apparently lots of people have harassed them over the years. I get the feeling just from driving through, because, I mean, it's just a random neighborhood in Albuquerque. I have no idea how they picked that house for the show. It is the most generic New Mexico neighborhood ever. But just from driving through there, it doesn't seem like the nicest place. Like, I know how it was in East Texas with lots of drug problems, lots of small crimes problems. What was it like being in Albuquerque? And obviously, it's very different than McKinney, I would guess.
It's very different than McKinney. Yes. So there, it's just a lot of, a lot of crime, a lot of homeless as well. I think there's, just a lot of poverty in some areas. I worked at Station 5 in Albuquerque for a number of years of my career as a firefighter, as a lieutenant as well, which was an area that was definitely it was the ghetto of Albuquerque.
Yeah.
And it was nicknamed the war zone. So there was a lot of overdoses, shootings, stabbings, structure fires, a lot of drugs that were in the area as well. And so you got to see things that I didn't see, because where I grew up, I was in a part of town on the west side of town, or in Rio Rancho, where I actually grew up as a kid. We didn't see as much of that. And even when I worked as a firefighter in Rio Rancho, I didn't see the trauma that I saw and the drugs that I saw when I went to Albuquerque. So yeah, it really was a rough town in some areas. There were some nicer areas, but that's one of the things that made us want to move out here. We literally had 2 shootings in our neighborhood that we lived in, and we lived in a pretty good neighborhood on the northwest side where there was a bunch of other cops and firefighters, but 2 shootings within the last 3 years that we were living in Albuquerque, in the area, the same place my sons would ride their bikes. And so that when it really
that's a wake-up call.
It was an easy decision. There was it just started to spread throughout the city. And so then working in city government, I saw, and knew about some of the ideas that were going around to try to address some of those problems. And I think there's a lot of, good intentions, but it didn't seem like the solution was coming anytime soon. And they still have some challenges as well that they're dealing with.
I mean, there's definitely some systemic and infrastructure-based challenges that come. I mean, geographic challenges, just generic economic challenges. Like, you're a medium-sized city in, north central New Mexico. I mean, the vertical mobility of anybody there is limited, to say, to put it kindly. So I imagine, what the challenges are today will still be the challenges 10, 20, 30 years from now. It's the kind of city that doesn't really change that much over the years.
It probably not. And then I think there's some other things that have a disadvantage to the city itself, because a lot of people think like El Paso, for example, and some of the crime and some of the crime coming over and the drugs coming over from the border. But talking to, law enforcement, my entire career, they were like, no, it's not as much, because if that's coming over the border, they don't stay in El Paso. They're going right up the freeway. You've got I-25, I-40 right in the middle of Albuquerque. Yeah. So you can go right up there, and then you can disperse that to wherever else you want to go. You can go to Denver, you can go to Phoenix, you can go, east to Texas, wherever you want to go at that point. So it really was a hub for some of that element that, you're right, it probably doesn't go away. Yeah. You can lessen that with different, rules, regulations, policies, things like that. But made it really tough.
Speaking of tough or challenging, bringing it back to the fire part of things, geographically, and we're very different from Albuquerque, from New Mexico. We actually have grass here.
Yes.
Although don't look at my yard right now. Actually, because it rained, it's greened back up. But it's
so
weeds.
There's mud now instead of dirt.
But it's weeds.
Yeah.
It's weeds. When it comes to what you see in your profession, are there differences in the types of fires that you're dealing with here versus back in Albuquerque?
Yes, there are. And it really caught me off. I did not think about it, but the lightning strikes that come through here. I did my entire career in Albuquerque, maybe a handful of structure fires that started from the lightning strikes. But here, it's impressive, to be honest with you, to see some of the storms that come through here. And then just the number of structures that will get hit by lightning at the same time. So that makes it really challenging, for McKinney, for Frisco, for Plano, and all these departments that are working next to each other. It just depends on where it hits. I can remember last year, I think Frisco ended up getting almost like 4 houses almost at the same time. And that happened in McKinney, last year as well. A couple of houses, and they're just right back to back. Well, you're not
from the same storm system.
The same storm, and you're just really not staffed for that.
Yeah.
We have 10 stations. So when we get a working structure fire, we will basically, send out essentially like half the city, to that structure fire. So we can get, 5 engines or trucks that are at that scene, plus a couple of ambulances and a battalion chief. So you're taking half the city. Well, now you take the other half for that structure fire, and it may not be east side or west side as convenient, and that's it. We're out. Now we're relying on some other resources to assist us with that. So it becomes a real challenge when those storms come through. And that's something I didn't experience before.
Now, is there anything that you can recommend for people to lessen their chances for
lightning strikes, Fred?
Yeah, that's
lessen you. I mean,
no metal in your house.
One thing I will say, Fred, not your Fred. I'm sorry. Roy Ponder has a side business that they've started. It's basically like storm protection, where they're installing residential lightning rods with copper conduit. That the whole thing is designed to attract the lightning because it's at the highest points of the house. And then there is an insulated copper line that runs to ground. So it literally takes that lightning strike and just whoop, puts it straight to the ground.
That's right.
Rather than transferring that energy into flammable, residential materials. I would imagine you're probably a big fan of lightning rods, aren't you?
Yes.
Okay. There you go, folks. There's your PSA for today. Get yourself a lightning rod for your house.
Are we allowed to drop names of companies?
Roy Ponder, I don't know what this storm...
It's My Storm Hero.
My Storm Hero. There you go.
My Storm Hero.
Roy, there's your shout-out, buddy. Love you, man. Keep on doing the good stuff that you're doing. Visit mystormhero.com. They're not a sponsor of this show, but I had Roy out to my house, and we haven't put it in yet because it's expensive, but we're going to before next storm season.
That's right. And they also offer whole house generators.
Yeah.
And
Generac. That's a great way to spend $15,000.
Yes. True.
Yeah.
But
you're happy when you did it.
Oh, yeah.
That's right.
Not losing power. Last time I checked, the cost of that lightning rod is less than my home insurance deductible. So it definitely, and less frustrating than dealing with a house fire and loss of belongings and disruption to everything. Because it's an interesting thing having a fire chief in here because we don't ever really talk about our work. Fred is a photographer by trade. I'm a commercial insurance broker and risk management consultant. So I'm trying really hard to not talk about my work in the context of having our fire chief here as a guest. The amount of interaction between the insurance world and the fire world is substantial. Just thinking in terms of, the damage caused by the fire is always dwarfed by the damage caused by the water and the smoke.
Yes.
And I have some paramedic questions, some EMT questions, because you're not just the fire chief, like you're also over paramedics and EMTs in our great city. Definitely want to not forget them because there's a lot of good folks that never fight a fire, but they're still stationed at the firehouse and whatnot. But before that, how do you guys train for behaviors inside of a structure? Because, if a fire person is undisciplined, they can create significantly more damage to the house than a small fire would be. What kind of training goes into the actual practice of firefighting? I know we have an amazing facility here in McKinney. It's part of the Cullen College education system to teach people how to be firefighters. How does the training go to teach someone how to enter a structure and not cause more damage than they're trying to prevent?
There's a lot of basic training that any firefighter is going to get, and then we keep expanding on that with just regular training. When you become an officer, you'll get some more advanced training as well. To simplify it, though, like an engine company would get on scene, their job is to put the fire out. But the other work that has to be done is what we call truck company work, and that is to make the building behave. So you've got one group that's trying to put the fire out, and one's to make the building behave as far as the ventilation, the flow path is what we call it. So just take like your bedroom. Say your bedroom was on fire at your house, and you have a window there, obviously, so it'll break the window at some point just with enough heat, and it's going to ventilate out the window itself. Now, if the door to that bedroom is closed, then it just stays somewhat confined to that bedroom. But if the door is open, and then the front door is open as you exit the building, you've now essentially created this flow path. So now fresh air comes in through the front door, and it goes throughout the house, and it's now going into the fire, making it bigger, and then going out that window. So we teach a lot of firefighters out just understanding where the flow path is at. How do we manipulate that to our advantage so that we can finish putting the fire out? So literally, firefighters are now opening and closing doors, in various circumstances so that we can control the fire in certain areas. And then, of course, you'll put fans at the front door so that we can, over-ventilate the structure. There's a lot of different techniques that we'll use. It's not as simple as put the wet stuff on the red stuff type mentality. Right. There's a lot of fire science that actually goes into that. And then, of course, it's where is the fire at this point? It's the obvious fire is inside the bedroom. It's the bed that's on fire, the furniture. Well, once it breaches into the void space, it's up in the attic space, it's in the walls, then you've got to figure out how do I attack that fire as well. Once it's in your attic, there's no drywall to protect it at that point. And so now you just have 2x4s, 2x6s that are exposed to that
are all very flammable and like to burn fast.
Exactly.
All of the insulation goes up. Poof. I mean, if it touches the insulation, you probably have a very big problem, if not a total loss.
Well, just think of all the kindling of all the cardboard boxes and things like that are there just ready to just...
All the combustibles.
That's right.
Yeah. And that's like a fire service, firefighter's mentality too, is that we look at buildings very differently. How do I get in? What do the locks look like? How are the doors manufactured? What's inside, its contents? Everything's combustibles. I come into this room and I'm like, that's flammable. You know what I mean? That's just their mentality.
The entire room is flammable.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Just that's the mentality that you have. We were doing in fact, before I came here today, we were doing a training. And so when our new firefighters get off probation, they have to present an LODD report to us, and it's a line of duty death. So they actually get information from typically a NIOSH report from a firefighter that had a fatal incident, and they'll go through the entire report, talk about the structure, how the fire came in, what were the tactics that they used, what were some of the mistakes they had. Typically it's communication, or it's, whatever those issues were, and then what are lessons that we can learn so they don't just, those firefighters aren't dying in vain, that we're trying to get better, we're trying to improve. Sometimes those mistakes are things that we feel like, man, I would have made the same decision. I can't, and then some of them you're like, I don't know, they should have never gone that direction or done that. But either way, they're great teachable moments. So we have 7 new recruits that are in the room right now. They're up at our training, and they get a chance to hear all of that from our new firefighters. And one of the things I love about the fire service is that you've never arrived. You're always trying to build, and you're always trying to improve. And every little piece that you can share with somebody else, it makes them better, it makes the team better. And so we share that information with each other.
Man, so you shared early on when you were with the volunteer fire department that you showed up and you used a phrase that caught my attention. You said that there was a fire in the back room with an elderly couple, and you said something about being a bread and butter fire. And I was like, man, are there situations that play out on a script? That's what came to mind initially. But then you talk about how fire has a path and with open doors and open windows and stuff like that. So when I don't think there's like a typical fire, because there's always going to be circumstances, but you train that there are certain things that you immediately do to, I guess, assess the situation.
Absolutely. So there's going to be some fires that, yes, they're pretty standard. There's always going to be some slight variables, whether it's the occupants in the house, the amount of combustibles, the size, one apartment building versus a large, mansion that we may have, 5,000 square feet. So there's always going to be some different variables. But yeah, we definitely train on all of that. Some of the standard practices that we have, like when we initially get there, our officers are making standard communications. So the first officer on whatever apparatus they get on, they're arriving on, an engine or a truck company, is going to give what we call initial radar report. So they're going to tell you exactly what's going on. It's a medium-sized 2-story residential house, and we have smoke and flames showing from the Alpha Bravo corner. So we just identify Alpha Bravo, Charlie Delta of our structures. And it's going to be an offensive strategy, meaning we're going to go interior, and they'll tell you, I'm going to stretch an attack line, and we have a water supply, and we'll be Main Street Command. So they're giving you a snapshot. This is what we have. This is what we're doing.
It's a sit rep.
Exactly. And so it's standard. It is standard. We want all of our guys to sound the same. It doesn't matter if you're giving it, if I'm giving it. It's very standard. This is what we have. Yeah. And everybody that's arriving now are coming to that scene. They're preparing mentally. Okay, this is what it is. We're very blessed with the equipment that we have. You should be able to see it on your screen. You should be able to see a lot of information about the house. Of course, we'll use Google Maps like anybody else. So our system will tell us where the closest hydrant is. So if they're not getting a water supply, the next truck's going to bring a water supply to them. But then the officer will get off the truck, and he'll do a 360 size up. He walks around the house. He's looking for other hazards that may not be aware from the front of the house as well. You know, is there a power line that's down in the back? Is there fire that's extended? I only saw it on the Alpha Bravo corner. Oh, I get to the back on the Charlie side, and now there's fire on the Charlie side as well, or it's up in the attic space. And he'll make that report as well. It's called a follow-up report. And so then, of course, at that point, line's probably stretched, and they're ready to go inside. And other trucks will come on scene. They'll make other assignments. Hey, someone do ventilation, do search, pull a backup line, you know, get me a water supply if they didn't have it. And then by then the battalion chief gets on scene, and the battalion chief will arrive. We want him to take command from the outside, so we don't have this person that's trying to actually stretch lines and search, you know, to continue running command. And then there's a transfer of command. So he'll just regurgitate, here's what happens. Hey, engine one, you stretch the line to the interior. You've got med one that's doing a search, and, you know, you've got engine two that has pulled a backup line for you. You know, is that correct? Yep, that's correct. I'll take the fire from out here. And then they run the fire at that point. But we do it so often in training that it becomes a little more routine. You get used to that, and that's what I mean by the bread and butter fire. There's certain fires that they're going to go really well, but you train for that. You know, so it's not an accident by any means. And there's multiple ways that we'll train for. We'll do it obviously at the training center that we have. We're very blessed to have that, multiple different types of buildings that we can do training on. But literally, we'll do training with iPads. We'll actually have buildings that, and we're building that models now that we can use our own buildings. So we'll take pictures of buildings, like I did a strip mall here that was just down the street last year, and we'll overlay that with different fire and smoke and things like that. So when our guys get on scene, they're giving an initial radar report on a building that's in McKinney, and then they'll give a follow-up report, and then they'll make their assignments, and then we're working with other firefighters that are either in another room, using a portable radio, or just in the same room, and we walk through that. And then we talk about what are the things that we could have done better or worse. You know, we kind of work through some of those issues.
How about that?
Yeah.
I would be remiss if I didn't have the fire chief here, and my kids will be annoyed if I didn't ask about the medics, because it's a running game in our family. As our kids love to point out the ambulances and are always looking for the number. It's M3, M5, M7, M9, whatever. Those folks are an integral part of the situation, whether they're paramedics or EMT, or paramedics at the top level, right? You've got EMT 1 and paramedics like the highest level of certification there. What part does that side of things play for the fire? Because obviously, you know, if someone has a motor vehicle accident, or if someone is, you know, in their office building, this building where we're sitting right now, and has a acute cardiac arrest, you know, they're going to call 911, and dispatch is going to send a medic, and, you know, those folks, the EMT and paramedics, have such a wide range of stuff they're responsible for. How do you guys keep track of all of that? Like, talk about the paramedic side of being staffed with the firehouses. But I mean, there's so much they're responsible for that has nothing to do with a fire.
You're correct. And actually, just to understand, we have 264 members of the McKinney Fire Department. 24 of them are civilian. Most of them work in our fire marshal's office. The remainder are our firefighter-paramedics. So everybody is a firefighter, EMT, or a firefighter-paramedic. So nobody is just a paramedic in the department. Everybody is fire trained.
Really? Absolutely. I had no idea.
Yeah,
okay.
Everybody is trained. So the way we're
and all the firefighters are also EMT or paramedic trained.
Yes, everybody is a firefighter-paramedic is the ideal. We want to get everybody up to that level as firefighter-paramedic. Yeah. They may start out in our department as a firefighter EMT, but we will send them to paramedic school. So the way it's set up is that we've got 10 stations, and so every station, majority of stations, and we're working towards that, have an engine company or a truck company. Truck company being the big ladder on the top. And then we have a med unit that's at the station. We've got a med unit in every station, with the exception of Station 9, Station 7, and Station 4. Don't have med units right now. Now we have a med unit that's coming for Station 9, should be here in a few weeks, and we'll put that into service. It'll be a slow rollout for it. But every station has basically that complement, and that's the goal. So you have an engine company, truck company with 3 or 4 guys on there, and then you have a med unit with 2 firefighter paramedics that are on there. And then there'll be some rotation. So the captain can decide, hey, you guys are riding the ambulance today, then these guys are going to ride on the truck, and we'll switch it halfway through the shift, because we run a 48-96 shift. So 2 days on, 4 days off. So we want to make sure we get some rest and rehab for some of those guys, depending on how busy you were. The way the calls work is depending on when you call 911, you're going to go through the dispatcher, and they're going to just ask you some different questions, and it's a pro QA system. So they'll ask you, if you tell them, hey, my friend is on the ground, he started clutching his chest, he's having a heart attack, he's not breathing, he's unconscious. To us, that's a no go. That means he's not breathing, he's unconscious. We just go. We just send everybody from that station immediately. But if they're on the ground, he's conscious, he's alert. He's not saying he's having bad chest pain, but he's a little out of breath. Maybe that's a lower acuity call, and maybe we just send the med unit to that. So it just depends on what level that is with the information that we get from dispatch. And that's how we determine. And majority of calls that we go to are EMS calls. I'd say 80%, and that's standard with pretty much every fire department that you'll have. And for McKinney, a lot of our EMS calls are going to be falls, they're going to be sickness, they're going to be shortness of breath, stroke, chest pain. It's a mix.
E-bike accidents.
Yeah, trauma, motor vehicle accidents on 121, 75. You don't want to hear a really cool story we had the other day. So last Friday, we had an officer, and we're going to present it to him at council next month. But we had a McKinney Police Department officer that noticed a vehicle that pulled off on Custer, and it was a 57-year-old male that had a heart attack while he was driving. And so he gets on scene, and he notices the person slumped over, pulls him out of the car, starts doing EMS compressions on him right there in the median. And our guys ended up showing up because he had called for assistance. They transported him to a local hospital, and he's going to make a recovery.
Oh, amen. How about that?
So it's a very cool system that we have. We have a wonderful partnership with the police department. Chief Ellenberg and I, we get along really well. We're really trying to partner with a lot of different things that we have. He and I partner with a new program. It's a SWAT medic program. So in the spring, we took 2 of our firefighter-paramedics, who obviously are very good at their EMS skills. They do it on a regular basis. And he's got this incredible SWAT team. And so they need, obviously, some medical protection for some of the tactical exercises that they do. And then, of course, the actual SWAT deployments that they have. And so who better to be on your team as a medic? Now, they're not armed, but they're a part of the team. And so we were like, let's just try this out. Let's see how this goes.
That's so cool.
And so we had 2 people that in our department that tried out. They both made it. They did really well. They went through the entire program. And now they're an integral part of that program. So it's a great partnership. So when the SWAT team from McKinney is out doing the SWAT things that they do, they have a trained firefighter paramedic there with all of the equipment ready to respond. It's a wonderful partnership that we have.
So would they pull that personnel from the closest firehouse, or are these other people that are, because you talked about the rotation on and off, are these people do you have other people that are on standby? Because it's not like SWAT says, oh, by the way, next week at 2:00 we're going to be needed.
Sometimes they do. Sometimes they actually do know about something ahead of time, and then they can give us a heads up. So there, it's a warrant or something like they know about. But yeah, if it's real fast and they're on shift, then they'll call us. Then we'll work with the battalion chief, and then we treat it like anything else, any kind of other mutual aid that we get. Like, yes, Can I not compromise our ability to respond and then send them out? Then absolutely, we'll send them out pretty quick. So it's a good partnership.
How about that?
Yeah.
Okay. Speaking of partnerships, the department's very good about showing up to places and doing what I call community outreach, meet and greet type things like that. How does that work? If you're out there and a call comes in, have you ever had to just say, we got to go?
Yes.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And a lot of disappointed kids. Like,
are you kidding me? The kids love that.
Well, they want the sirens.
They're in the middle of talking to a firefighter, and all of a sudden, the little radio on the shoulder chirps.
We need you to love it.
Blue team, go sector 12. And the kids. I mean, I can imagine the kids would go nuts.
Yeah.
Just like cheering for the firefighters, like, go get them, guys, you got this.
And most of the time we have events like that. We'll put the truck out of service. So if we go to a school and we're working with somebody, the truck will be out of service. However, the world doesn't stop.
Yeah,
so
that's right.
Other stations, as they're getting calls, dispatch knows you're out of service, but they know you're out of service subject to call. At some point, you're the next person up.
Yes.
And so they'll call you on the radio, even though they know that you're on an event, and we got to pull you out. We'll pull guys out of training, for example.
Yeah.
And just hey, I'm sorry, we'll get you some training later on in the month and make it up.
We're running a little short on time because we got somebody coming in 9 minutes. But I would be remiss if I didn't talk about your ascension to your current role. Is I want to give you props, man. You were out. You had retired from Albuquerque chief. You had moved to McKinney. You were working as a consultant. You got the call. It's like, hey, we want to move you from consultant to assistant chief. What was it about that move that speculate for a second, like, what did you do to make yourself so useful, so good at your job that they called you literally out of retirement to come be the assistant chief, then interim chief, and then you were the best candidate to be chief? Like, talk about that for a second. If you're okay with skipping the questions.
go ahead.
We can skip the lightning round and all that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I want to hear that story, man. Brag on yourself for a second, because that doesn't happen very often. That's a pretty unique story. Talk about that for a little bit.
Yeah, I honestly, you'd have to ask the city manager's office, and kind of what
Let's get Paul in here. Paul Grimes, not Paul Dow.
Yeah, right. what they saw in there. I think a lot of it, like I was alluding to before, the interaction I had with McKinney was just very professional from the get-go. I also knew how the fire service worked. I knew my role. So as a consultant, I didn't try to overstep my boundaries. You have to carry yourself a certain way in the fire service, and so I wasn't trying to impose my will by any means. As I'm building a training class for the department, it was a lot of input. So I actually went out and sat with every captain in the department, with every battalion chief, and I was like, "What do you want? What's content into this?" That really helped to just get to know the department, to know that these are the things we do well, these are the things that we don't do so well, these are opportunities missed. So when it came time to even interview, I think I was just definitely more prepared than any other candidate. I had the inside track, but I didn't have the, because everybody builds a reputation, good, bad, in an organization. So even if there was somebody that was, currently with the department for the assistant chief position, I believe I had the inside track, and the fact that I was able to identify those things because they were very honest with me, and it wasn't filtered. So that really helped.
Okay, so related to that, follow-up, it's safe to say that 2/3 of your life has been in this
fire service.
In this. And, first off, much respect, because this is a high adrenaline, high stress, high risk, position that you're in. For you and for your crew and for people who are considering a career in this field, what have you done to just make it this far and not just be, a brittle stick yourself ready to snap or catch fire? What are the things that you recommend or that you have seen have been key factors in you maintaining this? Because you seem very calm and just
You mean as far as like mental health?
Yes, and all those things. Yes,
things like that. Well, yeah, you're right, because like the fire service it's even challenging right now to be a firefighter. There's a lot of mental health challenges that some guys are dealing with. It's the lack of sleep. There's the traumatic calls that you go on. There's some PTSD that gets involved with that as well. For me, I think from early in my career, I tried not to absorb any of that. I just as best I could. I went through therapy at several points in my career, because I think at some point, everybody's cup fills up, and you've got to find some healthy way to go ahead and help manage that. I was blessed. I had good mentors, kept good relationships, wasn't afraid to have those conversations and keep them bottled up. But I think everybody handles that very differently. But also very much a man of faith. And so, rely on God and His presence in my life, and sometimes there's things you can't control, and when you give that up, and that's okay. It's not on me, it's on Him, and He can handle that. You can't. That right there changes everything.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's so amazing, man. James,
we're good.
Like, holy smokes!
I mean, I warned you we were going to run long.
We're at 40 minutes. That was 40 minutes.
I know, right? That's nuts, man. Anything we didn't ask that you came in here thinking we might talk about it, you want to talk about? This is kind of our last wrap-up question, and then I'll just leave you with whatever message you want to give the good people of McKinney as far as, hey, here's how you can better interact with, here's how you can help out the fire department and make your job more effective. That'll be I'll let you, talk about that, any kind of PSA that you want to put out. But was there anything we haven't covered that you thought we might or that you wanted to?
I really want the public to understand that, you've got some incredible, absolutely incredible people working to protect this city, both in the McKinney Fire Department, police department as well. But I love this department. I love our firefighters. I love their enthusiasm, their desire to make change in the city of McKinney inspires me. We have some individuals that they are so hyper-focused on just simple things that are they're very complex and very complicated as far as cardiac survivability, for example. I've got a couple of our members that are so focused on that. They just want to improve the cardiac survivability within the city of McKinney, and they're working as hard as they can, finding different programs, and that goes unnoticed. The public doesn't know that we're working on those type of things to make it a safer community. I've got people working in community risk reduction that are trying to develop programs so we can educate children and young adults about fire safety, first aid, things like that. We have a babysitters club class that we teach. We did the 2 in the spring and then 2 in the fall as well. We just had a 12-year-old little girl. We're going to recognize her at council. Took the class on a Saturday, November 2nd. The very next day, she saves her sister doing the Heimlich maneuver.
Wow!
From the training that she got in our class. So I'm so proud of the department, and it's one of those things that you can't make people want to care.
That's right.
They just care. They just love this community, and so I look at it as like my job is it's very. I tell people all the time, it's pretty easy in the fact that I just get to go out there and advocate for people that love their job and help. My job is hard to find, funding and opportunities and things like that so they can go and do the things that they want to do to make the department better, which makes our community safer. And so it's amazing. I'm very blessed to be here.
Yeah, amen. Well,
awesome.
We are blessed as a community to have you here.
Man, Paul Dow, Fire Chief of McKinney. We've got the links from your bio, the form you filled out. We'll put that in the show notes. Any final thoughts? Anything you want the good people of McKinney to be thinking about as they leave this episode? Any call to action? Any advocacy you want to put out before we go?
If you know of anybody that is young men and women that are interested in the fire service, we are now only hiring people that are a firefighter certified and EMT certified as a minimum. And so they can get that training. There's Collin College is an outstanding facility. If they're looking to get in the fire service, go to Collin College. Get your EMT, get your firefighter certification there. And I can definitely vouch for them. I think the training staff there is outstanding. I sent my son there. He just finished all of that training as well. And that's the way to get on that path. Because we get that question a lot. Because in the past, we did hire people without certifications. So if you know of anybody that's interested in becoming a McKinney firefighter.
How long is that program for them to get that certification?
It's going to take about a year.
About a year, okay.
That's something we'll have the president of Collin College in here early next year. I've been talking with their public relations team and whatnot. But what an incredible resource Collin College is. I mean, they have some 4-year degree programs, but the vocational training that they put out. I mean, when you look at the way the economy is going and the opportunities for young people to do skilled jobs, whether it's diesel mechanic or electrician or HVAC or whatever, fire service, police academy, whatnot. Golly, what an asset Collin College is for McKinney and for Collin County. We are extremely fortunate to have an educational institution as high quality as that is, literally in our backyard.
Oh yeah, that nursing. If you've never been in that building, you need to go take a tour of it. It's incredible.
I haven't been.
Yeah, just even the public safety training center that we have. The first time I walked in there, I was just blown away. I was like, this is
so cool, man.
Yeah.
I did leadership McKinney in 2020, and the facility was pretty new at that point. And just walking through there, it was like, this is neat, man. Like a lot of cities don't have this.
No.
We are the subject of jealousy of a lot of municipalities in our region and even across the state and the country. Like there's other facilities that are like that, but there's not that many of them anywhere in the country. So, I mean, anyways, I'm rambling, and that's not a good way to end an episode. He is Paul Dow, Chief of the Fire Department of the great city of McKinney. Thanks so much for your time today, man. I really appreciate it. And this has been another episode of the McKinney Podcast, celebrating what makes us unique by nature. We'll catch y'all next time. Y'all take care.